Hey guys! In today's video, we'll meet Ethan Brooks, a businessman who died in an accident and came back with a shocking revelation. The life we live is an illusion. What he saw on the other side will impact you deeply. So leave a like. Subscribe to the channel, activate the bell, and comment here from which city you are watching. I really want to know. Now get ready. Because this story will shake everything you believe in. I don't even know how to begin to describe what happened to me that night. But I'll try, because if you're watching this right now, maybe you need to hear what I saw. My name is Ethan Brooks. I'm 41 years old. I live in Denver, Colorado. I was always that guy who only believed in what I could touch, measure, or explain. God? Life after death? All of this to me was fantasy, until life, or rather death, proved me otherwise. It all started on an ordinary Tuesday. I had just gotten off work, one of those busy days full of problems and unattainable goals. My head throbbed. I decided to hit the road to unwind alone, listening to loud music and trying to forget the world. The last thing I remember is the deafening sound of tires screeching on wet asphalt. And then, the impact. A flash. A silence. As if someone had turned off the world. It wasn't like the movies. There was no screaming, there was no pain, just a strange feeling of lightness, like I'd left something behind. And I left. When I looked to the side, I saw my own body inside the destroyed car. My chest was still rising and falling slowly, but I was out there standing on the road watching everything. I stopped. I tried to scream. Nobody listened to me. I tried to touch my body, but my hand went through the air like fog. And that's when reality started to melt before my eyes. The world around me, the streetlights, the road, the sky itself began to fade, like paint running off a canvas. It was like someone was pulling back the curtain on what I thought was reality. And then, I felt a force, like a gigantic magnet pulling my being upwards. I couldn't resist. I couldn't resist. It was like being swallowed by something bigger, truer than anything I had ever experienced. As I was led away from that broken landscape, I heard a voice inside me. It wasn't an ordinary voice. It was like a thought that wasn't mine, that said, "Wake up. You were sleeping." At that moment, I understood. I wasn't dying. I was waking up from a lie I was taught to call life. As soon as that force pulled me away, everything I knew, the ground, the sky, the sensation of time itself, just disappeared. It was as if the entire universe had been just a thin layer of paint on fragile glass, and now the glass had shattered. I felt my being crossing an empty space, but it was not a dark void. It was white. Such absolute white that it hurt my eyes, if I still had eyes. It was not a common space, it was not a road, nor sky, nor earth. It was something, a between worlds. As I walked through it, I started to notice shapes appearing around me. They felt like fragments of my life, childhood scenes, faces of people I knew, places I'd been. But they weren't ordinary memories. It was as if they were holograms, projections, images of an assembled reality. And that's when the penny dropped. The life I lived, as if it were a movie being projected on a giant screen. But now, I saw everything from the outside, without the illusions, without the justifications that we create to survive. And I saw that everything was false. The rush to pay bills, the senseless fights, the fear of being judged, the foolish pride that took me away from the one I loved. Every emotion of anger, shame, fear, everything programmed, everything taught. Like I'd been hypnotized my entire life into believing this insane rush was normal. But the truth, naked and raw, is that it wasn't. From inside that white space, I saw that life here is like a play. We are born, someone hands us a script, and without even realizing it, we start acting, without ever stopping to ask, who wrote this script? My heart, or the consciousness that I was there, began to fill with a mixture of pain and release. I was starting to waking up to the fact that the life I thought was so solid, so real, was a carefully constructed illusion. And if you think that's scary, what came next would be even more so. Because something, or someone, was coming towards me, and he carried the truth. I was still floating in that infinite white space when I felt a presence. It wasn't like seeing someone approaching on a street. It was different. It was as if the very reality around me was being bent, opened, so that he emerged. At first, I tried to see a face, a shape, but there was none. It was just a gigantic, ancient, intense consciousness, and it spoke directly to me. Speechless, no voice, just pure, crystal-clear thoughts beating straight into my being. And what that presence conveyed was simple, and at the same time devastating. You lived inside an illusion. I felt as if an invisible wall inside me had been demolished. What you call life is not reality. It is a system built to test, teach, and mold sleeping souls. It was difficult to accept that. Part of me wanted to scream, to protest, and I thought, so everything I fought for, everything I suffered, was in vain? And the answer came before the question even fully formed. Nothing is in vain, but almost everything you believed was a lie. Images began to form around me. They looked like floating windows, showing scenes from Earth. Children being taught to compete before they even learn to love. Adults running after money as if it would save their souls. Nations destroying themselves for flags. People forgetting the present in the name of a future that never arrives. It was as if I was watching Earth from the outside, and what I saw was an invisible prison. A system where true power, love, compassion, conscience, was purposefully hidden, stifled by worldly distractions. And then that presence, which I mentally called Guardian, revealed something even deeper to me. You agreed to live in this illusion, but now you see, now you know, and knowing changes everything. The feeling was overwhelming and liberating at the same time. All my life I had believed that reality was this cycle of born, run, win, lose, die. But now I saw, we are much more than what they told us. Much more than we were led to believe. And at that moment, while the truth burned inside me like an unquenchable fire, the Guardian came even closer. He was going to show me who really commanded this illusion. The Guardian didn't need to lead me. It was as if he just thought, and the space around him shaped itself, opening invisible doors before me. I was pulled into another reality, as if crossing a membrane made of pure energy. And what I saw there left me paralyzed. In front of an endless vastness there were beings. They weren't human, not even angels in the way we imagine. They were gigantic consciousnesses, with shapes that changed like smoke and light intertwined, almost impossible to describe. These beings were sitting in front of huge structures as if they were gigantic control tables. Each structure manipulated golden threads, and I understood immediately. The threads represented human lives. With each subtle movement of beings, realities were shaped. Wars were started, love was born, dreams were erased, and humanity didn't even suspect anything. It was then that the Guardian projected directly into me a raw and impossible to ignore truth. Life on Earth is a game, a theater of learning. But many forget this and come to believe that the stage is all there is. My chest tightened in a way that felt like I was going to implode. I saw familiar faces being manipulated without knowing it. I saw decisions that we thought were ours, but were actually inspired, whispered, or distorted. An immense dance of illusions, all built to test how far a soul could wake up in the midst of blindness. I, Ethan Brooks, who thought I was so rational, so in control, now realized I was just a puppet. And worse, I accepted the ropes without ever asking who held the end. I looked at the Guardian speechless, just with my heart in ruins. And the message I received was clear as silent thunder. You can awaken, but few have the courage to see prison when it is too comfortable to question. As I absorbed that, a desperate question arose within me. So is there any truth here? Is there any way out? The guardian did not respond with words. He just opened a new portal before me, and what I would see next would be even more shocking. The true purpose of the illusion. I crossed the portal like someone crossing their own soul. It was like diving into something so vast, so deep, that it seemed to swallow every small thought that was still left in me. On the other side, everything was different. There was no longer that infinite whiteness nor those control machines. What existed there was a field of living energy, pulsing like the heart of the universe. And in the middle of that field, millions, no, billions of small points of light floated. Each point, I knew instinctively, was a consciousness, a soul, and each of them was connected to an invisible line that went down to Earth. It was then that the guardian revealed, Earth is not a prison in the human sense. It is a proving ground, a place where souls come to remember who they really are. The words echoed inside me like soft thunder. Oblivion is part of the plan. It was as if, at birth, we agreed to forget everything, where we came from, who we really are, the power we carry. We have fallen into a world that teaches us to chase the wind, to measure value by appearance, to look outside for what is already inside. The game is simple, the guardian continued in thought. Discover the light within yourself in the midst of darkness. I felt a lump in my throat, or something like that. How many times in my life have I felt that inexplicable emptiness, the feeling that something was missing even when everything looked right on paper? Now I understood. The void was the call. The silent reminder that that rush, that incessant search for more, would never fulfill what really mattered. Most people get lost in the theater, the guardian said, and I could feel an immense sadness emanating from him, a compassion impossible to measure. But those who wake up change everything around them. And it was at that moment that I understood something that shook me to the core. Every act of true love, every gesture of selfless compassion, every moment of real presence, were like lights breaking through the invisible bars of illusion. Every little spark of consciousness was a breach in the prison, a reminder to everyone that there is something much bigger waiting for us beyond this scenario of lies. The guardian showed me that the true purpose of life, it wasn't about surviving, era to wake up and help others wake up too, but I hadn't seen everything yet. He was about to show me what happens to those who refuse to awaken. The guardian moved his consciousness again, or maybe it was mine that moved. I can't even explain it. Suddenly we were thrown into another scenario, and what I saw there to this day gives me goosebumps just remembering it. It was a dark place, but not an ordinary dark. It was an absence of life, of joy, of hope. Think of an endless desert made of shadows, but with a strange gray light that made everything even more agonizing. In this space I saw millions of souls wandering. Some walked in circles, looking at the ground, as if looking for something they would never find. Others were kneeling, trapped in old memories, reliving pain, hurt, regrets. Endless, without knowing that they had already left the physical world. These souls had not awakened, they died trapped in the illusion. And now, even without bodies, they still carried the invisible chains they accepted during their lives. I felt a crushing weight on my being. I tried to approach one of them, a young-looking woman sitting on the floor crying softly. I tried to speak, but she didn't listen to me. It was as if she was trapped inside an endless dream, a nightmare that seemed as real to her as the life she led. The guardian conveyed the understanding to me. When consciousness refuses to awaken, it remains entangled in the illusions it created. Even without the body, it continues to believe in fear, pain, suffering, and thus, it recreates its own hell. It was like being punched in the soul, And at that moment I understood something terrible. Hell is not a place created to punish us. Hell is the continuation of illusion without the chance to wake up. I felt immense pain for those souls. They weren't bad. They weren't bad. They were just asleep, lost inside old dreams, bound by chains that they themselves unknowingly helped to forge. Then the guardian showed me one last image before taking me away. A single spark of light, emerging from the darkness, a soul finally realizing, this isn't real. I can wake up. And with that spark, everything began to change. Even in the most absolute darkness, the truth could still liberate. The guardian looked at me, or rather, at what I was at that moment, and transmitted, "You have a choice." And I knew that the most important moment of this entire journey was coming. After seeing it all, the illusion of life, the invisible control, the souls trapped in oblivion, I felt something shifting inside me. It was as if an old blindfold was being ripped from my eyes. I was no longer the man who drove that car that night. I was something else, something more awake, more aware. It was at that moment that the guardian approached again. But this time, there was a different solemnity to his presence. A weight. A responsibility. He showed me two roads. To my left, a road made of pure light, leading to a dimension so high that my being almost fell apart just looking at it. It was an irresistible call, an invitation to leave everything behind. No more suffering. Never again illusion, only eternal fullness. To my right, the earth, gray, noisy, full of pain and beauty mixed together, like an unfinished and imperfect painting. I saw familiar faces. I saw my little son who still depended so much on me. I saw friends who didn't even know that something bigger existed beyond the bills to pay, the empty routines. Then the guardian spoke to me, not in words but directly into my being. "You are free to go on, but if you wish, you may return. You may carry the seed of truth to those who still sleep. You may be a beacon in a world of darkness." I the cows. Part of me screamed to go away. I had seen the lie. I had felt the weight of the illusion. I deserved to rest, didn't I? But another part, a much deeper part, that I didn't even know existed, began to burn like sacred fire. The memory of those who were still imprisoned, the memory that one day I was there too. I closed my eyes, or what I now called my eyes, and let my heart choose. And the answer came, simple and powerful. I'll be back. At the same time, the light portal closed, as if it respected my choice. And I felt the guardian's smile inside me, not physically, but like a wave of approval, of pure love. Before leaving, he left me one last gift, a fragment of true memory, something I would need to carry back, never to forget. The certainty that life here is just the beginning. And then without warning, without preparation, I was violently pulled under. Back to where he had come from. Back to the body. But something even deeper was going to happen before I actually opened my eyes. The return was not what I expected. It wasn't smooth. It wasn't pretty. It was brutal. My consciousness, so light, so expansive minutes before, was now pushed into something heavy, suffocating, tight. My body, and my body, was in ruins. I felt the pain before I felt anything else. It was like wearing broken armor, full of splinters penetrating the flesh. Every breath was a fire in my lungs. Every heartbeat was thunder mixed with suffering. Part of me screamed to give up. "Come back to the light," an inner voice pleaded. "Leave it behind. It's not worth it." But the choice had already been made. I knew why I was there. I knew I needed to go back, even though every cell in my body was screaming otherwise. I began to hear distant sounds, Horns, screams, sirens. Someone was saying something close to my ear, but it was like trying to listen underwater. My vision was a blur, but inside me there was a flame, small, but inextinguishable. The flame of truth. I needed to remember. I needed to carry with me what I saw, what I felt. Even if the weight of my body, of obligations, of distractions tried to make me forget. I felt tears streaming down my broken face. They weren't tears of physical pain. They were tears of longing. Longing for my real home, for the wholeness that I knew existed beyond this layer of dust we call life. Somewhere, someone was shaking me by the shoulders. I heard a voice shout, "He's coming back, he's alive." And at that moment I realized, prison wasn't just the world outside. Prison could also be the mind, tiredness, forgetfulness. I needed to fight every day from then on to keep that flame burning, to remember who I was, to remember who we are all. The impact was so strong that my body convulsed, and suddenly my eyes opened. The raw light of the ambulances blinded me for a moment, but I smiled, because I knew that despite the pain, I had come back a different man, and what came now would be the hardest and most necessary part of my entire existence. If you've come this far, listening to my story, it's because deep down, some part of you feels it too. You feel like there is something wrong in this world. Feel that, despite everything they taught you, everything they forced you to believe. There is a greater truth waiting to be remembered. I know what it's like. I spent my entire life numb, chasing dreams that weren't mine, seeking acceptance in a system that never really cared. But today, after having died and waking up on the other side, I can tell you, the life you were taught is a convenient lie. You are much more than they say you are. You are not a number, nor a position, nor the sum of your bills or your failures. You are a spark of something divine, something they try to make you forget every day through fear, rush, competition, doubt. But if you stop, if you silence the clutter around you, if you listen to the little voice inside, the one that never shut up, even after so many falls, you will remember. You will remember that you were born for more, that your existence here has a sacred purpose. And no, it won't be easy. Waking up in a world that prefers to sleep is painful. You will be called crazy, a dreamer, naive, but it will all be worth it. When you see with your own eyes what I saw, that love is real, that compassion is the only true revolution, that life here is just a rehearsal for something infinitely bigger. If I could leave you with just one message, it would be this: don't believe everything your physical eyes show. The truth is within you, always has been. And now, it's time to remember. I'm Ethan Brooks, and I came back to remind you that you can wake up too. If you like this beautiful spiritual testimony, leave a like, comment on your impressions, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to activate the notification bell to watch each new video and help us spread this message to a greater number of people. Until next time.